Only a few days ago, many people were expecting the local Democratic primary vote for president would be more progressive than it was 4 years ago. Essentially, it was supposed to have been a contest between Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. Instead, Massachusetts became just one more piece of a late surge by former Vice President Joe Biden, who came in first statewide and here in Boston. To share some thoughts on what just happened is the District City Councilor for West Roxbury in Jamaica Plain, Matt O'Malley. Thank you very much for being with us, Councilor.
Always great to be with you, Chris.
By way of disclosure, you were backing Elizabeth Warren.
I was, and I still am backing Senator Warren. Obviously disappointed with the results, but did want to congratulate Vice President Biden on a stunning night that he had last night.
Well, one thing that struck me from all of this is that a lot of the local establishment, meaning political leaders, community activists, they were backing these two candidates originally, Warren and Sanders, and and I didn't see the mayor backing Biden, at least explicitly lately. So, I mean, how did this happen?
I think it underscores the fluidity of the race and just how important momentum means still in politics. You're right. There was no Joe Biden campaign apparatus to speak of, certainly in Boston, and particularly in my district in Southwest Boston. Senator Sanders had a lot of great supporters. Senator Warren had probably the most number of supporters, at least among elected officials and activists. I was out helping canvass for Senator Warren. I know Bernie had people out canvassing. My house was actually canvassed with Mayor Pete volunteer 2 weeks ago. There wasn't that same boots on the ground organization with the Biden campaign, yet after his stunning victory in South Carolina, you saw this absolute crescendo start to build of momentum of support. And as impressive as it was that he won Massachusetts, Vice President Biden won Virginia, a state where he didn't set foot in to speak of, and he won it by, I think, 25 or 30 points. So it showed that the momentum really was deep and was wide and really touched the entire country.
One of the other things about Boston is the racial pattern in the vote. I looked in precincts from the black community, in Roxbury, Dorchester, in Mattapan. It wasn't as pronounced as it was in South Carolina, but it was pretty much the same trend with Biden mostly ahead. Yeah, no, I mean, I think as was evidenced in South Carolina, to sort of kick this off on Saturday, which has a huge percentage of African-American voters, Joe Biden won the African-American vote overwhelmingly, and that was able to translate into significant victories across the way, certainly in Boston. Mattapan Biden won, Dorchester, I believe Roxbury Joe Biden won as well, predominantly African-American neighborhoods, and Joe did exceptionally well there. Well, what do you think was driving it? Because I had this build-up, and you probably had it as well, that this is a really progressive town. We're really focused on these things, and all of a sudden they go for this moderate establishment candidate. Yeah, I think it's interesting. I think Joe probably wouldn't consider, or the Vice President Biden wouldn't necessarily consider himself a moderate. Certainly, he was defined that way. And some Trump reporters, it's a word that feel the same way too, right? Indeed. But I think that as a Democrat, and I don't presume to speak for my party other than to say that many of us were dealing with this real internal debate about obviously we all know the stakes in this election. Defeating Donald Trump is priority one. And is it a better opportunity to have a candidate like, for the more progressive wing who can help generate new voters, or is it better to have someone who's more centrist who can win over those sort of battleground state voters? And one of the reasons I support Elizabeth Warren, because I think she can sort of speak to both worlds and would be an exceptional president. But I think one thing that was interesting is that in states where turnout grew dramatically, Biden had a huge victory. So actually, I think because of his success as vice president, clearly because of his strong association and great partnership with President Obama, he's been able to replicate and actually grow much of the Obama coalition, which was our key to success in 2008 and 2012. Chris, the voting in Boston started last week, the beginning of last week. So it was a much different world than. How do you feel about that we're getting this count after these other things happen later.
It's funny. I had this debate with my wife this morning, who neither of us, we voted yesterday, but she said, "Well, this is why early voting isn't fair because candidates have dropped out." I take a somewhat different view. I think early voting is terrific. Anything we can do to make it easier for folks to vote, we should be doing. This was the first time that we've employed the early voting option for a primary. It was wildly successful. For the non-City Hall locations, the top 2 locations in the city were Margarita Muñiz in Jamaica Plain and the Roach Center in West Roxbury. I'm very proud of that. And I think one of the things that we need to fix as a country going forward is you saw a number of voting locations, specifically in Texas and California, which had very, very, very long lines. I saw one report of a gentleman who had to wait 7 hours to vote, and he did, and he's a hero for doing that. So anything we can do to make it easier for people to vote, and early voting is a crucial part of that, we should be doing. Massachusetts did it right, and I'm hopeful that we extend this. Obviously, we will be doing it in the fall for the major election, but this is something we should be doing for municipal elections as well. The point that you sort of phrased this question is a good one. Things can change, but that's sort of how politics works. Things can change. Momentum can be a huge factor. It's seldom seen as dramatically impactful as it was last night, but it's still worth it to have opportunities to get more people to vote and to make it easier for all people to vote.
This is BNN News. We're talking with District 6 City Councilor Matt O'Malley. Councilor, you live in an interesting district yourself. Yep. You've got, at one end you got a stronghold for Bernie Sanders. At another end, you've got Trump supporters running for state committee, making issues. Tell me about the pattern that you saw in the district. Well,
just in terms of the Democratic primary results yesterday, Vice President Biden won West Roxbury. Elizabeth Warren was in second, and Senator Warren won Jamaica Plain. And I believe Bernie Sanders was in second. So I think it showed a lot of support for my chosen candidate, Elizabeth Warren. Clearly, we have a diversity of political theory, and that's a good thing. I would, while there certainly are Trump supporters, and we had a Republican state committee slate that was challenged successfully by another group, the vast majority of residents of District 6, like the residents of the city of Boston, are Democrats, are excited for a change. And just the voting numbers for our ward committee races, for obviously our candidates looking to lead the ticket, absolutely dwarfed those taking Republican ballots. So we appreciate all points of view, but it was a great day for Democrats in District 6 yesterday.
One of the other side effects of the voting yesterday, there are a lot of people, mainly backing people like Bernie Sanders and maybe among Warren's camp as well, feeling that the establishment got the better of them, and they're going to be upset about this for a long time. Yeah. Maybe they won't come out to vote. What do you say to stuff like that?
Having been on both winning and losing sides of elections, I know how difficult it is when your candidate, or as a candidate who lost his first time, knows. The stakes in this election could not be higher. And, whomever we nominate as the Democratic Party nominee, it is vital that we all rally around that person, whomever he or she may be. I'm confident that that's precisely what will happen, because, again, the stakes couldn't be higher. This is the most consequential election in American history outside of the Civil War. We need to make sure that we continue this passion. The fact that turnout was so high yesterday gives me hope that we will be a united party as Democrats come the fall, and we're going to take back the White House.
One thing that stands out to me about the voting, and I've looked at some primary contests in the past. There was competition 4 years ago, Clinton and Sanders. Going back to 2008, it was Clinton and Obama.
Yeah.
In 2008, I remember there were different parts of the local establishment behind different candidates, and it all seemed to make sense. There was this tie between the local and the national. Here, this sort of just blew in from nowhere almost. Didn't that feel strange to you?
Well, I think it underscored, again, the importance of this election and the excitement around an opportunity to, whether you support Senator Warren as I do, or Senator Sanders, or Vice President Biden, or any other candidate that was on the ballot yesterday, people recognize how important and consequential this election is. This was a lot more of a nationalized primary than perhaps we've seen. And I think it was borne out, obviously, as a very good night for Vice President Biden. And the fact that he didn't campaign to speak of in Boston or in Massachusetts, he still had a very, very good night. And again, it gives me great hope and a belief that we will be a united party in November.
Well, turning to one other viral phenomenon that you're addressing along with some of your colleagues in the City Council is COVID-19 and the city's part in getting prepared for this. What would you like to see?
So today at the council hearing, I offered a hearing order alongside Michelle Wu, Ricardo Arroyo, and Eddie Flynn, which will establish a public hearing where we can bring in all the relevant stakeholders, folks from public health, Boston Public Schools, travel and tourism, as well as the Longwood medical area, some medical experts, just to talk exactly about what our response should be and to share as much information as possible. You know, I don't want to politicize this issue, but we are currently watching a pandemic unfold in real time. I think the state and the city have done a good job addressing it thus far. There's a lot of misinformation and misunderstood information that's been presented. So I, as a local official, think it's prudent to share with people who live and work in Boston exactly what they need to know, what the impact will be, what the effects will be, how we can protect ourselves, how we should get information out. It's vital to me that we do this in different languages, that we do this at different access points. City and state governments are really leading this. Earlier this week, Governor Cuomo of New York announced that every Medicaid recipient would have access to testing automatically, which is terrific. At the federal level, again, it's being treated more of an impact on the economic markets, which is a factor as well, but it does little to assuage the concerns around the real public health risks that exist. We're not looking to create a false panic. We're not looking to elevate an issue to a level that doesn't warrant it where it currently is, but I think it's incredibly important that all local officials are able to share as much information in a transparent, open, and accessible manner, and we'll be having this hearing within the next couple of weeks.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you, Chris.
City Councilor Matt O'Malley. Still to come, we'll tell you about new affordable housing and a permanent branch library for Chinatown. But first, this message.